Hello class, today we are in chapter 8. We are talking about violence and religion. So, violence and religion, that's an interesting combination, isn't it? Because when we think about religion, we usually think about something that should bring an individual peace or help them to find truth or to bring about something better in society. Well, at times, religions can spark violence, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this today. So go with me, make sure that you're in chapter 8 and you have your textbook. Well, let's look a little bit at history. History shows that yes, religion is not necessarily violent, but religion has caused violent conflicts in the past. If you look back at your history, and if you had the Christian history course, or even if you just look back, um, there were lots of wars that were fought around the turn of the century, around about 1096 to about 1270 CE, over in the Middle East, as Christianity started to spread and move from what really would be like North Africa, kind of moving into Asia and Europe. What happened was then you had other sects. So you had Muslims starting to expand, and you had Christians. So with the Christian crusades were concerned about territory and reclaiming territory from Muslim rule. And when they were rigid and saying, well, this is our land or something like that, then hence you saw lots of wars breaking out because they wanted to reclaim their land. There have been lots of uh, conflicts over land such as Jerusalem, Kabul, and you will see Christians, Muslims, other religions as well will fight over land because they believe, remember religious truths in one of our previous chapter, because they believe that perhaps this particular land or the country or something like that was given to them by their God. Hindus and Muslims have also been fighting in an area called, have also continued to fight this particular battle in Kashmir. So this is something that has continued to go on even until this day. So I want to bring up something that's really important about religious violence. It's not just shooting somebody or something like that, but it's also psychological harm. Now, this comes up a lot even in 2020. Religious violence is still going on today. Even if it's not physical, it could be psychological. So check this out. It could be shame or guilt causing against individuals in the religion or maybe individuals outside of the religion. Social isolation, sexual assault, and beliefs and practices that would make the vulnerable, especially women and children, in a lesser position. So as you do your reading and as you even watch, I know we hate to watch the news, right? But even as we watch national news, pay attention to a lot of these areas and certain religions that believe that women can only do this or they can do that, or maybe they're mutilated. There are some groups that will mutilate young girls or women so that they will not be promiscuous. Okay, so that is religious violence. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about religion, and then we're going to go into some theories about, does religion really cause violence or its connection to violence? And Bruce Lincoln, and this is in your book, I want to say it's on page 99, 100. But Bruce Lincoln said that, look, if you're going to define a religion, it has to have or do four things. It has to have a discourse. And a discourse is what we talk about or what we believe in that religion. What makes it up? And then the second thing is, what practices do they have? Do they have a set of practices? Do they have rituals? Do they have some type of cleansing or something that they have to go through? a rite of passage for girls or boys. That's a set of practices. Step 3, they have to have a community whose members construct their own identity. So there is something that this group of people share together. They read the same book, they do the same things, they go to the same mosque, they go to the same church or temple. There is something that is held not just by one person, but as a community, they all will share in some type of practice together. And 4, there is some type of structure or institutional structure. So for this, for religion, you would say, well, who leads it? What type of structure does it have? For example, in Catholicism, it's led by the Pope. Okay, in different Christian um, uh, in Christianity, you have different denominations, and there's a hierarchy or order on how things are supposed to be led. Same thing for Islam. There is leadership in Islam. Let's look at two different views of religion. And here's a question: which one do you fall in? Maximalist view of religion. Okay, so this person says religion is everything. It's a part of their everyday life. It's a part of politics. It's a part of your economic cycle. It's how you raise your children. And for example, and many may hold to this, but check out the maximalists as well. So the maximalists, they may also say, well, because we believe this and we want it everywhere, we're going to change the school's curriculum so that it reflects this particular religion. Another example of the maximalist view of religion is that maybe they will change their attire, how they dress, because of their religion. So you see that a lot in Jewish culture and Judaism. Men are to dress a certain way and women are to dress a certain way. They are not to deviate from that. Now, check out the difference here with maximalists. You got to make sure you check all of the boxes. The maximalists, the root word is like maximum, but they think of themselves as the faithful and that everybody else is wrong and that everybody else is like a heathen, okay, or less than. So that's what the maximalist view is. Now, minimalist view of religion says, I affirm that my religious concerns are important and other people's religious concerns are important. It advocates the protection of religious freedoms from the government interfering on how you worship, on how you pray, on how you sing. There has been a lot of conflict lately with COVID-19 and the government telling churches to not meet, or to meet, or whatever. And so, those that would kind of fall under that category. Minimalists would say, well, look, the government can't tell us what to do or not do. The minimalists will also say that religious activity and influence would remain in their private practice, meaning they're going to do what they want to do, they're going to enjoy their religion, but they might not necessarily push their religion on the greater of society. Okay, so that's the minimalist view. And they also believe that their religion, this will not hurt or punish others. They won't hurt or punish somebody else if they don't share the same faith or religion as they do. Okay, so you might find yourself in either one of those categories, or maybe somewhere in the middle. Okay, which one are you, maximalist or a minimalist? And there's no wrong answer. What counts as violence? Well, you see the picture right here. That's pretty violent. Something that's happening outside of a religious institution, religious building. But violence, everybody in religious can cover a gamut of different things. So it may not always be setting fire to something. but it could be different ways. Let's talk about this real quick. Interpersonal, it'll fall two forms. So interpersonal and structural violence. So interpersonal violence will happen to an individual or maybe a groups of people. It can include some type of physical harm. They go out and kill people. They maim people. It could also be emotional, psychological, or spiritual harm. They may go out and damage property or deny another group access to property and say, no, you can't get in this particular area. This is ours. Structural violence is just that. It attacks the structure of society. So that's all the isms. It could be racism, sexism, heterosexism. It could be having ideals that may hurt others who worship or love a different way. Okay, that is structural violence. So now I want you to understand that violence and religion can look very different. It may not always be setting fire to something. Okay? Okay, so let's answer this question. We're going to answer this question with 3 professors of religion. Is religion inherently violent? What do you think? Is it just natural for a religion to be violent? And we're going to look at Professor of Religion Charles Kimball. And I apologize, his book is probably behind my face. And his book is called When Religion Becomes Evil. And that is by Charles Kimball. And he said that religions can be partly to blame. He said they partly do lead to violence. He said that people of religion believe their truth claim, and sometimes they don't accept the truth claims of other religions. And that makes the religion rigid, or that makes the person become rigid. So for example, they believe that their God is this, or they might believe that salvation is like this, or they might believe that this particular thing is holy or not holy, or whatever it is. Okay, so just listen. That's what they believe. And Kimball says when they believe that and they don't accept anybody else's view, that's when the individuals can become rigid and not bend. Okay? Now, he said another problem is they can get into violence, or religion can get into violence, when they become blindly obedient to a charismatic leader. And I want you to please take the time, if you can. It's a long documentary, but depending on your age, you may or may not have heard of this charismatic leader of a cult in the late 1970s. His name was Jim Jones. And I want you to go right here to this. Let's see if I can highlight it. I want you to go right here to this link. It's a YouTube link, and you can watch that video. It's about Jim Jones, and Jim Jones started off, and I want to say it is California, and he started this charismatic movement, and it is a cult, so we're not going to call it a religion. And so many people followed him and just blindly followed him, that they would have this wonderful life. And Jim Jones moved the individuals told the individuals to move from California, I want to say Southern California, and they moved to Guyana. And these people moved to have this wonderful life, and they separated themselves and farmed off of the land and everything. But Jim Jones really brainwashed this group of individuals, took their money, took their identity, and hence led them to commit suicide. And that definitely is violence. That's violence. Mr. Kimball also says that religions can be violent when holy wars happen. And we've seen in history where holy wars have occurred because they say, this is ours, this is our territory. You can't be over here, and because you're over here trying to take our territory, something's going to happen. And then you get these holy wars that occur. Or with not too far away, was September 11th, 2001. Where were you at that time? We'll never forget that day. Well, September 11th, we could kind of think about this as well. This is your discussion post, where religion played a big part in that, because those extremists thought that they were doing something that was godly, okay, and hurt and killed thousands of individuals. All right, is religion violent? Here's our next professor, Hector Avalos, and he argues that religion is definitely prone to violence. Do you believe him? He said that most violence is due to some resource not being in abundance. And he said most of the time, religious people will fight about something because they don't have this particular thing and they desire to have more. So if you look back in ancient times, like a lot of the Crusades, or even battles that took place even in biblical times, it was mostly because of land or some type of resource, and somebody moved in this particular area, and we wanted this area because we can farm, and it had this, and it had water, and I could sell my things. Okay, so when a resource is not available, that makes people upset. Okay, he says that violence can be morally justified in order to address some non-religious disputes, but it is always immoral, especially when it leads to somebody's death. Avalos also said to do away with religious violence, if we're going to do away with all religious violence, we got to do what? He said that we have to eliminate religion, because you can't prove religious truths. He said that if something's going to be true, you can't really say that it's true. We believe that that thing might be true, but he said you can't really find it in a book. Okay, so that's what Hector Avalos said. We might agree, we might disagree. Okay, and lastly, we're going to get to our third professor, and this is Rene Girard. He is a French theologian, and he is one of the most significant writers on the topic of religion and violence. And what Mr. Girard says is that people imitate things. We're mimetic. And he said that if one group of people see another group of people doing something and it's pretty good, they want to do it too. So the word was desire. He said, most people desire to do something that's good that somebody else might be doing, and that desire can turn into a rivalry. And he said this mimetic rivalry threatens the social order of our society. It messes things up. And Girard even goes back to say that sacrificial violence might be justified at times. And he also found some issues of sacrificial violence in Christianity as well. If you want to, I put a link here that you can read more about Mr. Girard. And so he said also that some conflicts are partially used as a scapegoat. You know what a scapegoat is? Like you push it off on something else, but it's really the blame is over here. Okay? But he said ultimately Christianity was the best antidote to violence. So I want you to take your time and to look over Girard and Kimball. Make sure that you understand and feel comfortable with those three in Avalos, and make sure that you feel comfortable with those three. Make sure you go back to your book. Remember Girard, Kimball, and Avalos. Okay, make sure, because you'll see them again. Make sure you know the differences between their theories, Girard, Kimball, and Avalos. All right, have a good one.